Hi, I'm MJ from Lioness Publications, and this afternoon we're going to be covering Bob Iger. For people that don't know, Bob Iger is the CEO of Disney. And Disney right now is embroiled in quite a bit of controversy over canceling a show of a comedian. So we're going to look at Bob Iger's chart because he is one of the prime movers of what's going to be happening here. And he's probably been one of the prime people involved in this situation. Now we're going to start off from about 823. So it's actually a little bit before the time frame now. So I think it sort of brings a little bit of clarity into this whole picture. And we're not going to get into personal things. We're going to look at him as, since he's a CEO, we're going to take a look at pretty much the things that he's facing in his chart that are likely related or how they relate to him being a CEO at this current time of what has been a very successful company for many decades in the States. So the first thing we have coming up is, and it actually already came up on 823 of 25, and that is Neptune opposing Saturn. Now, as a brief description, Saturn would be his policies, procedures, the rules he's following, the structure he goes by, and likely pretty much what he's used to dealing with or has been used to dealing with in governmental type entities. The Neptune is, since it's an opposition, Neptune is in effect how everything is thrown out, all the normal things. And I like to make it liken it to a fog. All of a sudden, you don't know how to react. So that's the situation that he's in. And if I have an analogy to go with this, it would be that think of him as being a ship's captain. He's got this big ship, and it has all the latest navigation, has all the bells and whistles. It's got a full crew, and it sets out on a voyage, going maybe from one island to another island. But as they're going there, a big fog rolls in. Okay, they can see it coming up, and it is huge and it is dense. The ship goes into it, and they can't maneuver around it. They can't turn around. And what happens is they start to lose their guidance system. It gets very flaky, and their compass is actually affected by this too. The crew is making their opinions known. They want to turn around. They want to move ahead. Even if there's something ahead of them, they're not worried about that. They just want to go ahead. They want to stop. So all differing opinions. So what happens with the captain of this ship? Well, he has to take all those opinions into account. And he also has to take the opinions of the whole ship, in effect, the value of that ship, as much as we may not like to hear that. And then he has to make a decision. But in effect, what happens is he also has to rely on his sense of navigation. And that may be a feeling. Sometimes when you're on the water and even in a fog, even if the air or the water is hitting something, you might be able to hear it. So in effect, he might have to rely on his other instincts to get a feeling on how to navigate. And that will also tell him whether he can navigate this and the best way to do it. So that is Neptune opposing, in effect, opposing Saturn. Okay, you're in a fog. And in effect, you have things that are already set up here, but the fog is not letting you use that. It's in opposition. So it's difficult to get to where you want to go. So remember, the ship wants to get to the island, but it can't get there because of the fog. So let's take a look at the next one we have here. And it's actually happened on the same time. It was Uranus trining Mercury, and it happened right around 823. So while that also, the Neptune opposing Saturn happened, Bob Iger also had another major angle. And this one, Uranus trine Mercury. In this case, let's use the analogy of a programmer writing a program that does a whole bunch of different things. It's very concise, very well thought out, very logical program. And that's good. I mean, that's sort of the Mercury part of this. But then what we have is this program, rather than just running on one computer, we get this super fast electric type of computer that can actually run this across many different computers. So rather than running just, on one computer, it's running on multiples. So it's running much faster. But more importantly, it's providing more insight. So in effect, think of it as being able to see patterns that other people miss. So during this situation that Bob Iger is being faced with things being very foggy, he's also getting a better thought process. He's able to see patterns or things that other people are missing. Now, it doesn't mean he's doing this for all the people in the United States. He's doing this for his company. He's doing it for himself. So let's not forget where the priorities are. But he does have this special trine at this point that is sort of electrifying his thought process on how to deal with this. The next thing we have is on 9/13, we have Pluto trining Saturn. So this was actually, it's also already happened. But Pluto, think of this as being foundations. Saturn is being the structure. And it's a trine. Great angle. So if I have to give an analogy for this one, think of Pluto being an architect here that has to redesign an old building. And they want to redesign it rather than just getting rid of it. Because remember, sometimes Pluto wants to just destroy everything. In this case, it's a trine, so it doesn't want to destroy. What it wants to do is innovate to be able to use the building for the new purpose. So we have the architect doing what? Well, he has to sort of check out the foundation. So they have to dig out around there. Pluto, foundation. And they have to reinforce that. So now, if we have the foundation, we can do what? We can make the structure better. Saturn. So what do? You reinforce it with steel. Okay. In addition, you make better plans for the floors. So all of this, in effect, is to do what? It's to be able to make what was there better. Make it more suited for the purpose that it needs going forward. This is also something that Bob Iger will need in today's environment. And again, this is for making sure his company survives, gets past the events that have been going on. So next one we have here is actually Uranus trine Mercury. And that we already described. That is the person that's the programmer and, writing a program that gets, in effect, put on a computer that's just super fast. The next thing we have is Neptune in that Uranus trine Mercury was on 9/19, so it's happening right now. So they're thinking lightning fast about how to deal with all this. So we may not see it, but that's what's going on. So they are thinking about all the possible angles, all the possible avenues, and expanding out. Okay, see what else, are we missing anything? On 9/20, we have Jupiter in conjunct Sun. Oh boy. So with Jupiter in conjunct Sun, we have what? Expansion. And then on the other end, we have what? Our identity. And the inconjunct says, we can't get there from here. So the inconjunct is saying it's not workable. So maybe whatever they come up with is not going to work. We don't know. We don't know what they're coming up with. So let's take a look at an analogy for this. And for Jupiter, I always love to use the hot air balloons. Just so appropriate. So you have a pilot in a hot air balloon. And he takes off and things are really, he's going really high, going really fast, very exhilarated. And then he realizes he doesn't know where he is. The landscape doesn't look familiar. He doesn't know which direction to go in. And at that point, it's like, 1 minute. What does he do? Does he adjust course? Does he try and bring himself down? Does he keep on ascending? Well, the lesson here is, remember, Jupiter, too much, Sun, identity, they can't get there. So somehow they're planning too much here. That's not going to get them to where they need to go. So in the case of the balloon, how do they steer it? I mean, what do they do in this? So now let's take a look at our next one, which is Pluto conjunct Mercury. Now, this is just an amazing piece because we're getting quite a few Mercury angles here. So we're getting the Uranus, but now we're also getting Pluto. Pluto is that foundational piece, that deep diving, that attention to getting, this all together. And again, it's the Mercury. So it's hitting his thought process. Best way of explaining this is that Bob Iger just became a deep sea diver. And he's diving down into one of the deep trenches in the ocean. He's got a light that he brought along. And the light lets him see in this trench that there's a whole bunch of buried treasure. Okay, which is great. So it's saying, oh, maybe this situation, maybe this buried treasure has shown me that there's some way I can come out of this and make something from it. But then he also sees the buried wrecks. That's saying, oh, there are things I have to watch out for here. So that's that Pluto and Mercury. Now, while he's down there, he has to conserve his oxygen. And he has to remember what he's there for. Okay, so it's the ability, in effect, to avoid getting lost in that abyss. So he's got the light. He sees the wrecks. He sees the buried treasure. But he can't stay there long. He has to get out. He can't get lost, or he gets buried in the abyss. With everything going on with companies, with the administration, the key is not to get buried in the abyss, not to get lost there. Now, this happened on it will happen on 10/4. But it's also going to come back and it's going to happen on 10/22. So this is an important part because it likely means that maybe they've found some way out of this, but it's tricky. Okay. Maybe it doesn't serve all, everything. Now, the next one we have is Pluto trine Saturn, and that's on 11/12. Now, this Pluto trine Saturn gets back to the architect, okay, where you have that building, where we have to build, make it structurally sound. So we have to make sure the foundation is good. So they are planning things, and they're trying to plan for the future. There are a lot of good angles, and when I first saw this, I thought to myself, he's giving up. But it isn't. It's just a different way of fighting. Okay, he's fighting for his company and also for himself, the employees, the stockholders, and all that. So we'll have to see how this turns out in the long run. I hope you enjoyed this and had a good evening. Bye.